Alright, we're going to be talking about how to create equations of lines. For this video, I'm going to be referencing your notes, page 5 right here, where I give you guys this necessary equation. So I give you y equals mx plus b and the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. These are the essential formulas that you need in order to do the tasks. We're going to go ahead and cover some examples together. Nope, not play from the start. Go ahead and this out the way. Alright. Alright, so in some problems, you're going to be given the slope and also a point. And in other problems, you'll be given 2 points and asked to find the equation of the line. Let's go ahead and start with the basics. What if you're just given a slope and a point? What I'm going to do first is I'm going to color code my point. I'm color coding it because you'll see later that it's going to help me make my calculation easier. If you don't color code, then what you want to do is you go below it and you put x, comma, y. In a coordinate point, your x is always first, your y is always second. The next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to identify an information that I'm given. I'm given that my slope is 7. Because my slope is 7, I'm going to go ahead and write m equals 7. Because in math, my m represents slope. Once I have my slope, what I'm going to be using is one of my essential equations, y equals mx plus b. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to substitute my slope right here for this m. Now that I have my slope substituted, I have a problem. I have this plus b here. Now b is not a number, so what I got to do is find out what b is using the information that I'm given. So I have an x right here and I have a y. I also have an x right here and I also have a y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute the x and y's that are found right here. X is 2, y is 7. So let's go ahead and substitute that. 7 times 2 is 14. Now to solve for b, because my 14 is positive, what I'm going to do is subtract 14 from both sides. 7 minus 14 is negative 7, and 14 minus 14 becomes 0, so these cancel out. So therefore, b is equal to negative 7. Now that you have your slope and your b, all you have to do is substitute into your y equals mx plus b equation. So y equals 7x minus 7, and you're done. That is your equation. We're going to go ahead and take a look at another equation where you're given the slope and a point to find the equation of a line. So let's say you're given the point 0, 0, and a slope of 7 over 2. Now, this question tries to throw you off because they give you the point first and then the slope. Previously, they gave you the slope and then the point. What you want to do is make sure you're interpreting that you're essentially being asked to solve the same type of equation. Alright, so my step 1 is, as usual, I usually like to color code my points. If you don't color code, then what you want to do is below your coordinate point, label x, comma, y, just so that you remember what your x and y's are. Next, what I'm going to do is identify my other essential piece of information, that the slope is 7 over 2. My next step is to go ahead and substitute into my essential formula, y equals mx plus b. My slope is 7 over 2, so I make my substitution. Again, my next step is to figure out what b is. What I'm going to use is the point that I'm given right here. My x is 0 in blue, and my y is 0 in red. We go ahead and we substitute. What's nice about the problems that have the points that have zeros in them is that it actually makes our calculations very easy. 7 over 2 times 0 is just 0, because anything times 0 is 0. So essentially what you get is 0 plus b is equal to 0. 0 plus b is just b. So therefore b is equal to 0. What you're going to do now is, now that you have your m and your b, you're going to go back to your central equation and substitute for m and b. So m is 7 over 2, my b is 0. Because we're just essentially adding 0, we don't need to include that in our equation. Y is just equal to 7 over 2x, and you are done with your equation. Now let's take a look at problems where they only give you 2 points. You notice that in this problem, they don't give you the slope. So you're going to have to find the slope using the other essential formula that I gave you. M equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. In order to use that formula though, what you have to do is label your first point as x1, y1 and your second point x2, y2 like this. I do that, and it also helps to color code if you have different colors as well. I usually color my x's as blue and my y's as red, just so that I'm keeping track of my information. Alright, so now what we're going to do is use my essential formula right here. M, which is my slope, is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Let's go ahead and substitute. So y2 is 9, y1 is 5, x2 is 2, and x1 is 0. Up here, 9 minus 5 is 4, 2 minus 0 is just 2. This is really cool because I have 4 divided by 2. I know that 4 divided by 2 just simplifies to 2, so that's very great. My slope is just 2. It's not a fraction, so it's less work for me. Now that you have your slope, you can go ahead and use your y equals mx plus b equation now. What you're going to do is substitute for m first, and now we're back to how the previous examples, the technique that we used to solve for b. So what we got to do is find out what b is. We have an x and we have a y. We could use this point right here, or we could use this point right here to make my substitution. No matter what point you use, you're going to still get the same equation of a line. My technique here is to use the point that has a 0 in it. This one right here, the 0, 5. So for x, I'm going to substitute 0. For y, I'm going to substitute 5. So let's go ahead and make those substitutions. See how my x is 0 and my y is 5. Zeros are very awesome because 2 times 0 is just going to give me 0. So I know that 0 plus b is just b. So I get that b is equal to 5. Since I have my slope is 2 and my b term is 5, I'm just going to go back to my essential equation and make my substitutions. So y equals 2x plus 5. And that's my final formula. So that is my equation of the line given 2 points. Let's go ahead and do another example where you're given 2 points and you're asked to find the equation of the line. My steps are as usual, so I know I'm given 2 points. Because I don't have my slope, I need to use my slope formula, which is m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. I first color code my points, and you always want to label your first point as x1, y1, and your second point as x2, y2. You're going to be using the essential formula, m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Let's go ahead and substitute those numbers in. So we got 6 minus 0 and 6 minus 2 at the bottom. 6 minus 0 is just going to give you 6, and 6 minus 2 is going to give you 4. You get a slope of m equals 6 over 4. One thing you want to take note of is that IXL does not accept fractions that are not fully simplified. Because I know that 6 over 4 is not fully simplified, if I keep it like this, IXL will mark you wrong, although your slope is correct. So what you're going to do is, because 6 is equal to 3 times 2 and 4 is equal to 2 times 2, what you're going to do is on top right here, you're going to cancel out a 2, and at the bottom you're going to also cancel out a 2. What you're left over with is 3 on top and 2 at the bottom to get your slope as m equals 3 over 2. So again, IXL is looking for the simplest form. Once you have your slope, you're going to go back to your essential equation. You're going to be making your substitution. As you can see here, I already made my substitution for m. Next, what I'm going to do is I need to solve for my b. I'm going to be either using this point or this point. Now again, remember my technique. I'd like to use the points that have a 0 in it because zeros make everything very nice. I'm going to choose this point. So for x, I'm going to substitute 2. For y, I'm going to substitute 0. Here's my substitution. Awesome. So a common thing that arises is, how do I multiply a fraction with a whole number? Here's how you do it. So first thing you want to note is, when you're adding or subtracting fractions, you need a common denominator, right? But when you are multiplying fractions, you do not need a common denominator. So I repeat, you do not need a common denominator when you're multiplying fractions. All you need to do is multiply across. In order for me to multiply across, I'm going to write my whole number 2 as 2 over 1. That way I can visually see that I'm going to be multiplying across. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. There we go. That's how you multiply your fractions. Alright, now 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. That's awesome. I get a whole number out of all these fractions. Sometimes you may end up with a fraction though, so sometimes things won't be so awesome. But anyways, now I gotta solve for b. So what I'm going to do to solve for b is, because this is a positive 3, what I gotta do to both sides is subtract by 3. 3 minus 3 is going to cancel out to 0, and then I'll have b is equal to negative 3 on this side. Awesome. So now I have my slope as 3 over 2, and I have my b as negative 3. Because I have my initial information to plug into y equals mx plus b, let's go ahead and substitute, and we are finished with our line formula. Awesome. So if you need any more questions answered, or if you want to go over some more problems one-on-one, you must come into office hours, and I'll look forward to having you. Good luck on the IXL.